I have been publishing poetry books since 2015. My first book, Baptism of Apathy, is a mess of symbolism, metaphor, yearnings, tortured spirituality, and narrative. All of my books are in one way or another heavily inspired by song lyrics, and most are heavily narrative-driven. This marriage of narrative and song is something that drives my works forward, connects them together, and strengthens the lyricism. My books are filled with characters, starting with Baptism of Apathy, whose main characters are Christian and Natalie, a traditionalist Catholic couple watching the world burn down around them, sending the message that it is better to watch the world burn with you than to watch it burn alone. And also heavily criticizing traditionalist Catholicism by seeing the world through the eyes of those who, persuaded by charlatans, follow the doomsday ideology of isolation and ultimate despair.
Canto 27. What we need is surety that we are walking the wrong direction. So then we'll know without a doubt the world is insane. And when we lose our mortal souls and hell is our destiny, there will be no one to pour a single drop on our burning tongues. All we want is to sleep with beautiful celebrities. Selena Gomez takes the stage singing childhood songs about the Holy Roman Church. It firmly believes, professes, and preaches that all those outside the Catholic Church, not only pagans but also Jews or heretics and schismatics, cannot share in eternal life, but will go into the everlasting fire that was prepared for the devil and his angels. And unless I'm joined to the church before the end of my life, I'll never see her face again. The dogs then slit her throat as she screamed that we'll be together forever, forever. Forever never ends. 1,000 scattered thoughts. A Bible with all its pages torn. A world of disenchantment. The last day of high school. A nation we never thought would burn. Picture frames that will never be filled. Brother Peter Diamond. When we walk the path to hell, I want to walk alone. All the words from all the books filled with nothing but erroneous phrases, promises that would never come true.
Baptism of Apathy also features a character named Jordan, name taken from the frontman of the defunct Canadian band We Are Bravest, who fights to end a pointless war and tries to save the relationship between him and his girlfriend Chloe. This whole situation was heavily inspired by Anti-Flag and Rise Against lyrics. The major inspiration for choosing to use narrative so heavily throughout my books was, at least subliminally at first, taken from my great appreciation from the lyrics of Green Day. Green Day's two albums, American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown, are two of my favorite records of all time, not necessarily because of the musicality, but because they tell stories. To me, these albums are heavily narrative-driven poetry. There was something about the narratives of these albums that led to their success, gained the interest of the audience, and solidified the records as classics for years to come. Both these records have double meanings. For example, Holiday is Jesus of Suburbia having a party in the city, and at the same time the band uses this moment as a vehicle and metaphor to express rage against the injustice caused by George W. Bush that led to the Second Gulf War. The follow-up song, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, leads into the same thing, but portraying the world through the eyes of Jesus of Suburbia after the party, as he walks alone experiencing a hangover, much like the isolation people went through in the early 2000s as they were opposed to the war, and yet many people viewed them as anti-American for opposing it. Thus, this narrative-driven song writing led to a connection with the audience, and this connection led to a call to action of sorts, as the listeners follow Jesus of Suburbia to the end where he meets what's-her-name and then eventually forgets her name and settles for a desk job, forgetting the dreams of his youth. In a similar way, the mechanism of double meaning, poetic names, and narrative-driven lyricism has heavily influenced my poetry. From the character of Purity from Purity Redeemed, Pain and Serenity from Love Poems at the End of Our Lives. Although not all characters follow this trend, the character Ella from Unity and the character Natalie have relatively banal names. In another sense, the characters Liefie and Harmonie directly correlate to the emotions they embody. My goal was always to, through compelling narrative, write poems that connect to the reader in a way that rallies them and raises up a call to action in the reader's heart. When I first started writing poetry, I never thought I would be telling large and interconnecting stories that were bigger than any one single work. In a sense, I've created a franchise. When I finished my first book, Baptism of Apathy, I was quick to notice the flaws in the work and wrote 2 more editions of the same volume. There was never any intention to write sequels to any of my works. The first sequel I wrote was The Last Poem, a sequel to the love poems at the end of our lives. There was never an intention for the sequel when I originally wrote it. I thought I was done with it. The book was written in a month or 2 during the marathons of writing in long and passionate sessions. I no longer have a strong memory of writing this work. It happened so fast, and I had a wow moment when I was done with it. It is a book Mike, my friend and fellow author, read and told me that was a good book. After he informed me that he read the whole thing in one sitting on a trip and could not put it down. This was a great moment for my writing career. Although all my work is to some extent inspired by Leaves of Grass, the last poem takes this to an extreme, with its optimistic, hopeful, and grandiose statements, to the flow of the verse, to the long Whitman-esque catalog lists found in the poems. Love Poems at the End of Our Lives is a series that consists of 7 books, 2 of which have not been written yet. The first is Love Poems at the End of Our Lives. Book number 2 is The Last Poem. Book number 3 is The Penultimate Poems. Book number 4 is The Revenant. Book number 5 is There's a Serenity in the Dark. Book number 6 is No Greater Sorrow. And book number 7 is The Last and Eternal Fire. Each of these poems, while reflective of personal experience, ultimately tells a story of 2 characters, aptly named Serenity and Pain. These are poetic names and are not meant to be taken as their actual names. The greatest and initial inspiration, aesthetically, for Love Poems at the End of Our Lives, although not really lyrically, was watching the music video by Hey Violet called Break My Heart, which portrays a girl going through heartbreak during her time in high school. When I watched this video, I began to come up with a story. A girl, a punk rock poet and visionary, is killed on the last day of high school and leaves her love interest behind. And as she goes through space and nothingness after her death, she renames her crush to Pain. Yes, I'm gone now.
Yes, I'm gone now. I passed away several years ago, and I see you. I've been in this state for ages, watching, waiting, less than a phantasm, more than a myth or a legend. If I knew what words were anymore, I would call what I'm feeling pain. But I will never feel and call it pain again. If I call anything pain, I think you should be the person I call pain. Pain of the thing I felt before, but now lost and cannot replace.
There is also a line in the song Break My Heart that states, I sent the band the first 3 books in the series in the fall of 2019 and I've not received a response. I presume because the character aesthetically is similar to the front woman of the band, and I kill off this character in the first book of the series. However, this is a common motif in most of my works. Christian is the first main character to die. Ella Sturm dies before the end of Unity. Purity, the main character from Purity Redeemed, is burned at the stake at the end of her story as a messiah figure. At the beginning of the respective books, Liefie and Harmonie, each book announces that Harmonie and Liefie, the main characters, are killed before the poems begin. There is a reason why I tend to kill off most of my characters. In a sense, it is because the last words of someone tend to be the most valuable. People tend to not recognize the beauty of something until it is gone. This leads us into a discussion of one of the major themes of love poems at the end of our lives, which is not being able to recognize truth or beauty or value, even when that value is right in front of you. In the story, the character Serenity emails a poetry book she wrote to the entire school, and no one really read it until the day after she was murdered. And then they discovered how masterfully crafted her words are when it was too late. There is a phrase in the Bible in which Jesus said, "Thus they would not listen even if someone were to come back from the dead." In The Revenant, the character Serenity comes back to life. I do a lot with this analogy, referencing it directly as the resurrected Serenity is on a Greyhound bus from New York to D.C. In the Penultimate Poems, Serenity writes a poem about lying alone on her bed.
Love with poetry when I'm alone on my bed, and then the cosmos resonates and it speaks to me and tells secrets to my soul that you would only hear if you listened closely and felt my breath.
In this way, there's a strong connection with appreciation of the natural world and seeing the value in poetry, asking someone to glimpse within a person's soul. Another quote from the same character from the book The Revenant is,
"But now I can see that me and the world are intrinsically combined. We exist in each other, whether I'm dead or alive. If you're looking for authority, look to nature."
This theme carries over to the book Harmonie, in which the title character speaks at the end of the book.
I was sitting under the tree in my youth, and I was writing in a journal all of my thoughts. In my youth, I was listening closely to the spirit between the light and the expanse of the sky. I was staring at the sky, and I was waiting for someone to speak words that would describe what I was feeling. I was waiting for the world to find grace, while it was free falling away from it. I was wanting to sing joyfully and triumphantly about the things that I had experienced in such a way that every living person in the world would understand them.
My writings often reference song lyrics and the names of bands, if not directly quoting them. Examples of this are the bands Balancing the Different. The band Good and Broken, for example, is the only band directly quoted in the last poem. In some ways, musicians are the modern poets, the modern bearers of lyricism, although poetry deserves to be just as appreciated in our culture as music, and for as long as writing exists, songs will inspire poems, and poems will inspire songs, and nature and love and the good and dark parts of life will perpetuate this cycle. This is the first part of a longer essay. In the future, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I think I'll probably turn it into a book, but that will require a lot more editing. But this is just my initial thoughts, preview of what's to come with my analysis of my own writings and the lyrics of songs and the lyricism and narratives of other poets. Thanks for listening.